Hong Kongers walk an average 6,880 steps a day, the most in the world. Everyone is always on the go, from the morning until late into the night. There's also passionate movement to protect the interests of the underprivileged, people going the distance to help those in need. In a city where change is the only constant, it's not an option to stand still.
This is Asia Now.
It's 11 a.m. in Singapore and Hong Kong, 8:30 in New Delhi and 10 o'clock in Jakarta. I'm Loke Wei Sue at this hour. Australia's state of Victoria going back into lockdown. It's fourth since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, this time for 7 days. Authorities are calling it a short, sharp circuit breaker to allow contact tracers to get ahead of a growing coronavirus outbreak. China accuses the U.S. of politicizing the origins of COVID-19 after President Biden tells intelligence agencies to redouble their efforts into investigations, raising fresh questions about a leak involving a laboratory in China's Wuhan city. And Cyclone Yas weakens after the storm makes landfall on India's eastern coast. Authorities in West Bengal reporting up to 10 million people being affected. Australia has placed its second most populous state of Victoria under another snap lockdown, this time around for a week starting midnight. Melbourne City is facing a surge in COVID-19 infections. Acting State Premier James Merlino said evidence is growing that officials are dealing with a highly infectious B1617 variant, first detected in India. Authorities also blamed hotel quarantine failures and a slow vaccine rollout for this latest outbreak. This is the fourth time the government has put the state of Victoria under a lockdown since the pandemic started. Mr. Merlino described it as a circuit breaker designed to allow contact tracers to get on top of cases. The new restrictions will see a ban on public gatherings. Residents are permitted to leave their homes only for essential reasons, which include getting vaccinated. Most students will move to remote learning. Victoria earlier this morning reported 12 new cases, 11 from Melbourne. On this, we speak with Brianna Piazza in Melbourne. Brianna, another lockdown for Victoria, the fourth one, in fact. What makes it different this time?
That's right. So for the past 3 months, the state of Victoria had actually enjoyed about 3 months of zero cases of COVID-19, this latest variant escaping from a returned traveller in hotel quarantine. What makes this particular outbreak different to previous outbreaks is just the rate at which it's spreading. So although case numbers are quite low, so we're seeing, for example, 26 cases linked to this outbreak in Victoria. However, we've seen the number of cases double within a single day, and Victoria's contact tracers say they cannot keep up. Now, we've got 150 exposure sites across the state. Many of those are very public spaces. So, for example, stadiums, public transport, cafes and restaurants. So that's what's got authorities so concerned at the rate of spread, just how quickly it's spreading, this outbreak.
Some blame as well from officials over the central government's hotel quarantine system. What would they have liked to have seen instead?
That's right. So as I mentioned, not just Victoria, but actually across Australia, we've seen basically COVID-19 eradicated in previous months. All of the recent outbreaks in Australia have been linked to hotel quarantine failures. And that's because health experts say hotels are not ideally designed to quarantine people for COVID-19, and that's because of the risk of aerosol spread. That is how we're seeing the virus escape from hotel quarantine. People who return from overseas who aren't infected but end up getting infected because the person staying next door to them in the corridor, they're spreading the infection through the corridor and into their hotel room. So that is what has authorities, particularly across the states, concerned. Many are calling on the federal government to build more fit-for-purpose purpose quarantine facilities. Currently, it is the states that are running the hotel quarantine facilities. And basically what we're hearing is that experts are saying that we can expect more and more outbreaks like this to happen in Australia.
This lockdown that is impending for Victoria State, one of the reasons for which people are allowed to go out of their homes is if they go to get vaccinated. But officials this morning are also taking a swipe at the central government for its slow vaccine rollout. What sort of impact will this latest outbreak have on the inoculation drive across Australia?
That's right. So the vaccine rollout has been fraught with difficulties from the very beginning for Australia. So already since this latest outbreak, we're starting to see vaccination hubs in Victoria getting busier. So it seems to have actually pushed more people to get vaccinated, which is what authorities want to see. We heard earlier today from Acting Premier James Merlino that had more Victorians actually been vaccinated in this case, then we may not be potentially facing another lockdown like we are now. So that could have really changed the situation. The issue that we're dealing with in terms of the vaccination drive is it's not just a slow rollout, but we're also seeing increasing hesitancy among the population to get vaccinated. And then in addition to that, complacency. So we have people who are saying, well, if we don't have many cases of COVID in Australia, then what's the point in getting vaccinated? There's no real urgent need. So that is definitely something that authorities hope the latest outbreak will change that sense of complacency.
Thanks for all those updates. Brianna Piazza speaking to us there from Melbourne. Our Chinese media are making light of US President Joe Biden's efforts to get a definitive answer on the origins of COVID-19. He's asking the US intelligence community to report to him within 90 days on whether the new coronavirus first emerged in China from an animal source or from a lab accident. This is the second report Mr. Biden has sought after the first was found to be inconclusive. The editor of the Communist Party paper Global Times called Mr. Biden's move a blockbuster suspense movie, saying the ending is to be found instead in the Fort Detrick biolab. Chinese state media have in the last year raised questions about what they claim was an outbreak in 2019 of a mystery respiratory illness in Virginia, an hour's drive away from that lab. The Chinese embassy in the US has also called out President Biden for politicizing the origins of the pandemic and says it will impact investigations, give free rein to the so-called political virus, and seriously hamper international cooperation on COVID-19. This latest war of words follows fresh speculation about a lab leak in China, which Beijing has repeatedly denied. The White House wants China to be more forthcoming.
You know, China wasn't transparent enough. We have been saying that for a very long time, that China needed to provide more access to the lab.
That lab is the Wuhan Institute of Virology, which the WHO visited in February this year. It concluded a lab leak was extremely unlikely, but did not rule it out. This week, the Wall Street Journal reported 3 researchers from that lab becoming sick in November 2019. That is a month before China first alerted the WHO to a mysterious pneumonia outbreak. Meanwhile, U.S. top infectious disease expert Dr. Anthony Fauci says there is still a higher likelihood of the pandemic occurring naturally, but further investigation is needed because there is no certainty as yet.
It happened with virtually all the influenza pandemics. So the historical basis for pandemics evolving naturally from an animal reservoir is extremely strong. And it's for that reason that we felt that something similar like this has a much higher likelihood. But again, getting back to what I said, and let me repeat so there's no lack of clarity in that, no one knows, not even I, 100% at this point, which is the reason why we are in favor of further investigation.
A severe storm has left a trail of death and destruction in India's east coast. At least 5 people are dead, tens of thousands of homes destroyed, and more than 2 million people evacuated in 2 states. Cyclone Yas made landfall yesterday. It carried winds of up to 140 kilometers per hour, bringing heavy rain and high tides to coastal areas in the state. Many people were forced to flee to shelters after losing their